Chapter 1. The night everything changed, Sophia Carter sat in the dimly lit hospital room, clutching the pale blue blanket meant for her unborn child. Tears streamed down her face, her body trembling from the weight of the evening's events. The sterile smell of antiseptic filled her nose, a harsh reminder of the life she had just lost. She glanced at the empty chair beside her bed, the chair where Ethan should have been. The miscarriage had come without warning. Pain stabbed through her abdomen and panic consumed her as she reached for her phone. She dialed Ethan's number, her hands shaking uncontrollably. "Please pick up," she whispered, her voice hoarse. The phone rang until it went to voicemail. She tried again and again. After what felt like an eternity, she called a cab herself and stumbled into the emergency room alone. She had held on to the hope that Ethan would arrive, that he would walk through the door and hold her, reassuring her that they would get through this together. But he didn't. As the nurse hooked her up to Infor, Sophia's phone buzzed on the tray beside her. Relief surged through her as she grabbed it, only to see a notification from Emma Knight, Ethan's secretary. It was a post on We Moments, a photo of red candles burning, with the caption, "Light will break through the darkness and dispel all fears." Sophia's heart sank further when she noticed the familiar watch in the photo, a sleek, silver timepiece she had given Ethan for their 7th anniversary. His hand was in the frame, resting casually beside Emma's. The betrayal hit her like a freight train. She stared at the image, trying to piece together what it meant. Was he with Emma tonight? The possibility felt surreal. A knock on the door startled her. It was the nurse, carrying her discharge papers. "You're free to go, Mrs. Carter," she said gently. "Do you have someone to take you home?" Sophia hesitated, forcing herself to stay composed. "I'll call someone," she replied, though she knew she wouldn't. She couldn't go home, not yet. The house held too many memories. Of Ethan, of their plans for the future, of the nursery they had prepared with so much hope. Instead, she wandered the quiet streets, letting the cold night air bite her skin. Her mind replayed every moment of their love story. From their first meeting in high school to their wedding day, Ethan had been her world. They had been inseparable, their love the envy of everyone they knew. But now, as she faced the reality of his betrayal, she couldn't ignore the cracks that had been forming over the past year. When she finally returned home in the early hours of the morning, she found Ethan asleep on the couch. The sight of him, so peaceful and oblivious, ignited a fury she hadn't known she possessed. "Ethan," she said, her voice cutting through the silence like a knife. He stirred and blinked at her, confused. "Sophia, what's wrong? Why are you out so late?" Her hands clenched into fists. "Where were you tonight?" Ethan sat up, rubbing his eyes. "I was with Emma. She called me during the power outage. She was scared, and You what?" Sophia interrupted, her voice trembling with anger. "You stayed with your secretary while I was in the hospital losing our baby." His face turned pale, the weight of her words finally sinking in. "Sophia, I didn't know. That's the problem. Ethan, you didn't know because you weren't there. You chose her over me, over us." Her words hung in the air, heavy with pain and betrayal. Ethan reached for her, but she stepped back, her tears falling freely now. "I needed you," she whispered, "but you weren't there." Without another word, she turned and walked upstairs, leaving Ethan alone in the darkness. For the first time in their 7 years of marriage, Sophia felt truly alone. Chapter 2. Cracks in the Foundation. The next morning, Sophia woke to the sound of clattering dishes in the kitchen. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her body aching from both physical and emotional pain. The events of the previous night replayed in her mind, each memory sharper than the last. Ethan was trying to act normal. That much was clear when she walked downstairs and found him standing by the stove, flipping pancakes, as if a good breakfast could erase what had happened. "Good morning," he said, his voice cautious. Sophia didn't respond. She sat at the dining table, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Ethan placed a plate in front of her, but she didn't touch it. "I'm sorry," he began, sitting across from her. "I didn't know you were in the hospital. If I had—" She raised a hand to stop him. "Don't. Just don't." Her voice was calm, but her eyes betrayed the storm brewing inside her. "You should have known, Ethan. I called you. I begged you to answer. Instead, you were lighting candles with Emma." The name came out like venom, and Ethan flinched. She was scared. "And I wasn't," Sophia snapped, her voice rising. "I was losing our child. Ethan, I was alone, scared, and in pain. But you chose to be with her. What does that say about us?" Ethan rubbed his face, his frustration evident. "I made a mistake. I'm sorry. What more do you want me to say?" Sophia laughed bitterly. "You think an apology is enough? That it will magically undo everything?" She stood, unable to sit still any longer. "I don't even know who you are anymore," she said, pacing the room. "The Ethan I married would have never left me to deal with this alone. The Ethan I loved wouldn't have made me feel like I'm competing with his secretary." Ethan looked up at her, his eyes pleading. "Sophia, it's not like that. Emma means nothing to me. She's just—" "Don't," she interrupted, shaking her head. "Don't insult my intelligence by pretending this was innocent. If she means nothing, why were you there? Why did you prioritize her fear of the dark over your wife and child?" Ethan had no answer. He sat in silence as Sophia's words filled the space between them. Finally, she stopped pacing and looked at him, her eyes filled with tears. "Do you even love me anymore?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Of course I do," Ethan said, standing and reaching for her. "Sophia, I love you more than anything." She stepped back, avoiding his touch. "Then why do I feel like I've already lost you?" The weight of her words hung in the air as Ethan stood frozen, unable to find the right thing to say. Sophia turned away, walking back upstairs. Chapter 3: Ghosts of the Past. Sophia spent the rest of the day in their bedroom, surrounded by the remnants of a life she no longer recognized. The nursery down the hall was a painful reminder of what she had lost. She couldn't bring herself to step inside. Not yet. As she scrolled through her phone, her finger hovered over the photos of happier times. There was a picture of her and Ethan on their wedding day, both of them beaming with joy. Another of them at the beach, his arm wrapped protectively around her, as the sun set behind them. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized how distant those moments felt now. Her phone buzzed, breaking her train of thought. It was a message from her best friend, Mia. "Mia, hey, are you okay? Haven't heard from you in a while." Sophia hesitated before replying. "Sophia, not really. Can we talk?" Minutes later, Mia arrived at the house, her face full of concern. She pulled Sophia into a tight hug the moment she walked through the door. "What happened?" Mia asked as they sat on the couch. Sophia recounted everything: the miscarriage, Ethan's absence, Emma's post. Mia listened intently, her expression shifting from sympathy to anger. "That bastard," Mia muttered. "How could he do this to you? After everything you've been through together?" Sophia shrugged, her shoulders slumping. I don't know anything anymore. You deserve better, Sophia, Mia said firmly. You've given him everything. And this is how he repays you? He doesn't deserve you. Sophia's eyes filled with fresh tears. I don't know if I can leave him, Mia. I still love him. Or at least, I love the man he used to be. Mia placed a hand on Sophia's shoulder. Then make him prove he's still that man. If he wants to save this marriage, he needs to earn back your trust. And if he doesn't, you'll know what you need to do. Sophia nodded, feeling a small flicker of strength ignite within her. Mia was right. She couldn't keep living in this limbo. It was time to confront the truth, no matter how painful it might be. As Mia left, Sophia stood by the window, staring out at the setting sun. She took a deep breath, bracing herself for the road ahead. Whatever happened next, she knew one thing for certain. She would no longer be a victim of Ethan's choices. It was time to reclaim her life. Chapter 4: A Fragile Confrontation. Sophia sat on the edge of their bed that night, staring at the clock. It was nearly midnight, and Ethan hadn't come upstairs. She could hear the faint clinking of ice in a glass from the living room below, a sound that betrayed his restlessness. She inhaled deeply, mustering her resolve. This time, she wouldn't let him deflect or evade the conversation. It was time for answers, real ones. Sophia descended the stairs, her bare feet making no sound on the carpet. Ethan was sitting on the couch, a glass of whiskey in his hand, his head tilted back as he stared at the ceiling. The dim glow of a single lamp cast shadows across his face, highlighting the weariness etched into his features. Ethan, she called softly but firmly. He sat up, startled, and turned to face her. Sophia, I thought you were asleep. She crossed her arms, standing at the edge of the room. We need to talk. Ethan nodded, setting his glass down. I know. I owe you an explanation. Sophia took a seat in the armchair opposite him, her posture rigid. Then start talking. He ran a hand through his hair, his eyes darting to the floor. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Emma, she's just my secretary. Nothing more. Nothing more. Sophia's voice rose, laced with disbelief. You spent our anniversary night with her, Ethan. You ignored my calls while I was in the hospital, and you were lighting candles with her instead. How do you expect me to believe she's nothing more? Ethan's jaw tightened. It wasn't like that. She called me, saying she was scared because of the power outage. I didn't think. That's the problem. Ethan, Sophia interrupted, her voice shaking. You didn't think. Not about me, not about our baby, not about us. He looked up at her, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. Sophia, I swear to you, nothing happened between me and Emma. I was trying to help her, but I made the wrong choice. I know that now. Sophia leaned forward, her gaze piercing. Do you even realize what you've done? You've destroyed the trust we built over 7 years. The love we had. It feels like it's slipping away because of your actions. I know, Ethan said, his voice barely audible. I know I've hurt you, and I don't know how to fix it, but I love you, Sophia. I always have. Love isn't enough, she said, her tone cold. Not when you've broken something this fragile. Love doesn't erase betrayal. Ethan, it doesn't erase the image of you holding her hand while I was alone. Losing our child. Ethan's head dropped into his hands, his shoulders heaving. I don't know what to say. I've failed you in every way possible. But I'm begging you, please don't give up on us. Sophia stood, her body trembling with the weight of her emotions. I don't know if I can forgive you, Ethan. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I can't keep living like this, pretending everything is fine, when it's not. He looked up at her, his expression desperate. What do you want me to do? Tell me, and I'll do it. Sophia hesitated, her heart aching. I want space. I need time to think about what I want, about whether this marriage is even worth saving. Ethan's face fell, but he nodded. I'll give you whatever you need. Just don't shut me out completely. Please. She turned away, unable to face him any longer. I'm going to bed, she said quietly, her voice hollow. As she climbed the stairs, Sophia felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. She had finally said what she needed to say, but the road ahead was uncertain. Could their love survive this? Or was it already too late? Chapter 5. Secrets Unveiled. The following day, Sophia decided to take control of the situation. She couldn't let Ethan's vague apologies and promises be the end of the conversation. If she was going to make a decision about their future, she needed the truth, no matter how painful it might be. She picked up her phone and scrolled through Ethan's social media accounts, searching for any sign of Emma. It didn't take long to find her profile. Emma Knight's page was filled with curated images of her life, business meetings, lavish dinners, and candid moments that seemed anything but accidental. Sophia's stomach turned as she came across a post from a week ago. It was a photo of a handwritten note that read, "Some bonds are unspoken but stronger than words." Beneath it, a single comment from Ethan beautifully said. Sophia's hands trembled as she stared at the screen. She needed answers, and she knew there was only one way to get them. She stood abruptly, grabbed her car keys, and headed out the door. She was going to Emma's apartment. When she arrived, she hesitated for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest. Then, summoning every ounce of courage, she knocked on the door. Emma answered, her face registering surprise. "Sophia," she said, her tone cautious. "We need to talk," Sophia said, stepping inside before Emma could respond. Emma closed the door behind her, her expression guarded. "What's this about?" "You know exactly what this is about," Sophia said, her voice sharp. "Ethan, I want the truth about what's been going on between you two." Emma hesitated, her eyes darting to the floor. "There's nothing going on," she said weakly. "Don't lie to me," Sophia snapped. "I've seen the way you look at him, the way you post things about him, and I know he was here on our anniversary. So, tell me the truth." Emma sighed, her shoulders slumping. "Fine, I care about Ethan, more than I should, but he's never crossed the line, Sophia. He loves you. He talks about you all the time." Sophia's eyes narrowed. "Then why do you keep trying to insert yourself into his life? Why do you keep pulling him away from me?" Emma didn't answer. Her silence spoke volumes. Sophia took a deep breath, her voice firm. "This ends now. Whatever bond you think you have with Ethan, it's over. He's my husband, and if you truly care about him, you'll stay away." Without waiting for a response, Sophia turned and walked out of the apartment, her heart heavy but her resolve stronger than ever. As she drove home, Sophia knew the battle wasn't over. But for the first time in weeks, she felt a spark of hope. She was reclaiming her life, one step at a time. Chapter 6. The Aftermath. Sophia returned home, her mind swirling with the confrontation at Emma's apartment. She replayed every word Emma said, every pause that betrayed more than what was spoken. The cracks in her marriage felt wider now. Yet, for the first time, Sophia felt a sense of agency. When she stepped through the front door, Ethan was waiting for her. His face lit up briefly when he saw her, but the smile faded as he noticed her hardened expression. "Where were you?" he asked, concern lacing his voice. "I went to see Emma," Sophia said bluntly, not breaking eye contact. Ethan's face paled. You what?" "I needed answers." "Ethan," Sophia continued, her tone sharp, answers you've been unwilling to give me. So, I went to the source. Ethan sank onto the couch, running a hand through his hair. I can't believe you'd. Don't, Sophia interrupted, her voice cold. Don't act surprised. You've left me no choice. She admitted she has feelings for you. Ethan, did you know that? He looked up at her, guilt written all over his face. Sophia, I swear, I never. I don't want your excuses, she snapped, her voice trembling with anger. What I want is the truth. Have you ever felt the same way about her? Ethan hesitated for a moment too long. And in that silence, Sophia felt her heart crack even further. I care about her as a friend, he finally said, his voice low. But that's it. I swear to you, Sophia, I've never crossed that line. Sophia scoffed, crossing her arms. You think that makes it better? That your so-called friendship with her was more important than being there for me when I needed you the most? Ethan stood, his hands clenched into fists. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but I've been trying to fix it, Sophia. You don't see that because you're too hurt to let me in. Sophia stepped back, her voice rising. You don't get to blame me for this. You betrayed my trust, Ethan. You abandoned me when I needed you. And now you're trying to make me feel guilty for not forgiving you fast enough. Ethan's shoulders slumped, and he looked away. I don't know how to fix this, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Sophia stared at him for a long moment, her chest heaving with the weight of her emotions. I don't know if you can, she said finally, her voice breaking. But I do know that things can't go on like this. Chapter 7. A Proposal of Separation. The next morning, Sophia woke up early, the heaviness of the previous night still weighing on her chest. She sat in the kitchen with a cup of coffee, staring out the window at the quiet street. She had made up her mind. When Ethan came downstairs, his face was a mixture of hope and apprehension. Morning, he said cautiously. We need to talk, Sophia said, her voice calm but firm. Ethan nodded, taking a seat across from her. I've been thinking, she began, choosing her words carefully, about us, about our marriage, and everything that's happened. And I think we need some time apart. Ethan's eyes widened in shock. You're asking for a separation? Sophia nodded, her expression resolute. Yes, I need time to heal. Ethan, time to figure out what I want and whether I can forgive you. And I think you need time to reflect on what you've done and whether you're truly committed to fixing this. Ethan reached across the table, his hand trembling. Sophia, please, don't do this. We can work through this together. I've tried, Ethan, she said, her voice thick with emotion. But every time I look at you, I'm reminded of that night. I can't keep living in this cycle of pain and doubt. He dropped his hand, his shoulders sagging. Where will you go? I'll stay with my sister for a while, she said. I need space to think clearly, and I can't do that here. Ethan nodded slowly, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. I understand, but I'll do whatever it takes to win you back, Sophia. I promise you that. She stood, her heart aching as she looked at him. I hope you mean that, Ethan, because if you don't, this separation will become permanent. As she packed her bags later that day, Sophia felt a strange mix of sorrow and relief. Leaving Ethan was the hardest decision she had ever made, but it was also the first step toward reclaiming her life. Chapter 8. A New Beginning. Staying at her sister Mia's house provided Sophia with the solace she desperately needed. Mia, always the supportive sibling, welcomed her with open arms and a listening ear. Over the next few weeks, Sophia threw herself into rebuilding her life. She started painting again, an old hobby she had abandoned after her marriage. The act of creating something with her own hands brought her a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. She also began seeing a therapist, someone who helped her process her grief and anger. Through these sessions, Sophia realized that her self-worth wasn't tied to Ethan or their broken marriage. She was more than a wife, more than a woman defined by loss. Meanwhile, Ethan sent her letters almost daily, each one filled with apologies, memories of their happier times, and promises to change. Sophia read each one, but didn't respond. She needed to focus on herself first. One evening, as Sophia stood in front of a blank canvas, her phone buzzed. It was a text from Ethan. "I know I've hurt you in ways I can't undo, but I'm not giving up on us, Sophia. I love you, and I'll spend the rest of my life proving it, if you let me." Sophia stared at the message, her heart conflicted. She didn't know if she was ready to forgive Ethan, but for the first time, she felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, their love could survive after all. Chapter 9. The Reunion Dinner. Weeks passed, and Sophia found herself gradually coming to terms with her pain. Therapy sessions helped her confront her feelings of betrayal and guilt, while her time spent painting became a form of catharsis. Her days at Mia's house were peaceful, but the nights were often restless, filled with memories of Ethan and their life together. One afternoon, Mia walked into the living room with a hesitant smile. "Ethan called me," she said carefully. Sophia put down her paintbrush and turned to her sister, her expression unreadable. "What did he say?" "He asked if he could arrange a dinner with you." "No pressure, just to talk," Mia said. "I told him I'd pass the message along, but it's entirely up to you." Sophia hesitated, her heart warring with her mind. She wasn't sure if she was ready to face Ethan again, but a part of her was curious. Had he really changed, or was this just another attempt to win her over without real effort? "I'll think about it," she said finally. Later that night, Sophia sat by the window, looking out at the moonlit sky. Her thoughts drifted back to Ethan's text messages and letters. He seemed genuine, but trust was a fragile thing. Once broken, it wasn't easily mended. The next day, she texted Ethan, "Let's meet tomorrow night at the cafe by the park." Chapter 10. A heartfelt conversation. Sophia arrived at the cafe the following evening, her heart pounding. She had chosen a simple black dress and kept her makeup minimal. The cafe was quiet, with only a few patrons scattered around. She spotted Ethan sitting at a corner table, his hands clasped together as he stared out the window. When he saw her, he stood up immediately, his expression a mixture of relief and nervousness. "Sophia," he said softly as she approached the table. "Ethan," she replied, taking a seat across from him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was heavy, filled with unspoken words and lingering emotions. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice sincere. "I wasn't sure if you would." "I wasn't sure either," Sophia admitted. "But I thought maybe it's time we talked." Ethan nodded, his gaze meeting hers. "Sophia, I know I've said this 100 times, but I am so sorry for everything, for not being there when you needed me, for letting my priorities get so messed up. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking for it anyway." Sophia studied him carefully. He looked different, older perhaps, or maybe just more vulnerable. "Why now, Ethan? Why did it take losing me for you to realize what you had?" Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't have a good answer for that. I was selfish, Sophia. I took you for granted. But losing you made me see how much I've messed up. I've been seeing a therapist too, trying to understand my actions and fix myself. Sophia was taken aback. You're in therapy? He nodded. I started a few weeks ago. I realized I couldn't fix our marriage if I didn't first fix myself. And I want to be better, not just for you, but for me too. Sophia's heart softened slightly at his words. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was a start. I appreciate that, Ethan. But this isn't just about you. I've been hurt in ways that won't heal overnight. I know, he said, his voice breaking, and I'm willing to wait. However long it takes, I'll be here. They talked for hours, sharing their feelings and fears. For the first time in months, Sophia felt like they were truly communicating. By the time they left the cafe, there was no clear resolution, but there was something else, a glimmer of hope. Chapter 11. Testing the waters. Over the next few weeks, Ethan and Sophia began to rebuild their relationship slowly. They started with small gestures, texts, coffee dates, and occasional dinners. Ethan made a genuine effort to be present, always checking in with her and respecting her boundaries. Sophia, too, began to open up, sharing her thoughts and feelings more freely. It wasn't easy. There were still moments of doubt and pain, but the walls between them were gradually coming down. One evening, Ethan surprised her with a bouquet of daisies, her favorite flowers. I know these don't fix anything, he said, handing them to her, but I wanted you to know I'm thinking of you. Sophia smiled despite herself. Thank you, Ethan. They're beautiful. As they sat on her sister's porch, Ethan turned to her with a serious expression. Sophia, I want to ask you something. What is it? She asked, her heart skipping a beat. Would you consider coming back home? Not permanently, just for a weekend. I want to show you that things can be different, that I'm serious about making this work. Sophia hesitated. The thought of returning to their shared home was daunting, but she saw the sincerity in his eyes. Okay, she said finally. I'll come for the weekend, but no promises. Ethan nodded, a small smile of relief spreading across his face. That's all I'm asking. Chapter 12. The first step. When Sophia stepped into their home that weekend, memories flooded back, both good and bad. Ethan had made an effort to create a warm atmosphere, lighting candles, and cooking her favorite meal. They spent the evening reminiscing about their early days together, how they met in college, their first date, the nights they spent dreaming about their future. For the first time in a long while, Sophia felt a sense of connection with Ethan. As the weekend came to a close, Ethan walked her to the door. Thank you for giving me this chance, he said, his voice filled with emotion. Sophia looked at him, her heart conflicted. It's going to take time, Ethan, but I'm willing to try. Ethan smiled, a tear slipping down his cheek. That's all I could ever ask for. As Sophia drove back to her sister's house, she felt a cautious sense of hope. Their journey was far from over, but for the first time, she believed that maybe, just maybe, they could find their way back to each other. Chapter 13. Boundaries and Progress. The weeks following Sophia's weekend visit to her former home were marked by careful steps forward. Both she and Ethan agreed to move slowly, respecting each other's space and emotions. Ethan remained consistent in his efforts to rebuild her trust, while Sophia focused on balancing her healing with the possibility of reconciliation. One day, over lunch with Mia, Sophia shared her thoughts. I'm giving him a chance, she said, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. But it's not just about him proving himself anymore. It's also about me learning to let go of the resentment. Mia nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. That's a big step, sophomore. You've come so far, and whatever happens, I'm proud of you. Later that week, Ethan invited Sophia to an event at his office. It was a charity gala that he had planned himself, something he had poured his energy into as part of his personal growth. "I'd love for you to come," he said over the phone, his voice tentative. "No pressure, of course, but it would mean a lot to me." Sophia hesitated, being around Ethan's colleagues, especially after the events that led to their separation, felt daunting. But she also knew this was an opportunity to see how much he had truly changed. "All right," she said finally, "I'll be there." Chapter 14. Facing the Past. The night of the gala, Sophia chose a simple yet elegant navy blue dress. As she entered the venue, she felt a wave of nerves but steadied herself. Ethan greeted her at the entrance, looking sharp in a tailored suit. His expression lit up when he saw her. "You look beautiful," he said, offering her his arm. "Thank you," she replied, taking it hesitantly. As they moved through the room, Sophia couldn't help but notice the curious glances from some of Ethan's colleagues. She spotted Ava, the secretary who had been at the center of their troubles, standing by the bar. Ava seemed to sense her gaze and quickly looked away. Ethan noticed too and leaned in to whisper, "She's leaving the company next month." "I've kept things professional, but I wanted you to know." Sophia nodded, appreciating his honesty. Throughout the evening, Ethan introduced her to various guests, always making sure to keep her comfortable. When it was time for him to give a speech, Sophia watched from the crowd, her heart swelling with a mixture of pride and nostalgia. "As someone who has learned the importance of accountability and compassion, I'm honored to host this event tonight," Ethan said, his voice steady. "It's a reminder that growth is always possible, no matter how far we may stray from our best selves." Sophia couldn't help but feel a glimmer of admiration for him. He was trying not just for her, but for himself too. Chapter 15. A New Chapter. After the gala, Ethan walked Sophia to her car. The night air was cool, and the city lights twinkled around them. "Thank you for coming tonight," he said, his tone sincere. "It meant so much to me to have you there." "It was a good event," Sophia replied. "You did a great job." They stood in silence for a moment before Ethan spoke again. "Sophia, I know I've said this before, but I'll keep saying it as many times as it takes. I'm so sorry for everything. And I'm so grateful that you're giving us this chance." Sophia looked at him, her emotions conflicted but hopeful. "I still don't know what the future holds for us, Ethan, but I do know that I'm willing to take this one day at a time." Ethan smiled, a mixture of relief and gratitude in his expression. "That's more than I could ever ask for." As she drove home that night, Sophia felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in months. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time, she felt ready to face it one step at a time. Chapter 16. Unearthing Hidden Wounds. A week after the gala, Sophia decided to visit her childhood home for some time alone. It was a small, cozy house tucked away in the countryside, filled with memories of simpler days. She needed space to reflect on everything, the pain, the progress, and the possibility of reconciling with Ethan. Sitting in her old room, Sophia opened a wooden chest filled with keepsakes from her past. Among the photos and letters was her wedding album. As she flipped through the pages, a bittersweet smile crossed her face. The pictures told a story of love and joy, but they were also a stark reminder of how far they had drifted apart. Her thoughts were interrupted by a call from Ethan. She hesitated before answering. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi," he replied. "Mia told me you're at your childhood home. I hope it's okay that I called. I just wanted to check on you." "I'm okay," Sophia said, though her voice betrayed her uncertainty. "Take all the time you need," Ethan said gently, "But if you ever want to talk, I'm here." After the call, Sophia lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. She realized that while Ethan was making progress, she still had her own healing to do. Chapter 17: The Therapist's Advice. The following week, Sophia scheduled another therapy session. Her therapist, Dr. Lane, had been a steady source of guidance throughout her journey. "I feel like I'm at a crossroads," Sophia admitted. "Ethan is trying, and I see that. But I'm scared. What if he hurts me again?" Dr. Lane nodded thoughtfully. "It's natural to feel fear after betrayal. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight. It's a process just like healing. The important thing is to set boundaries and communicate your needs clearly." Sophia nodded. "I've been trying to do that. But sometimes I wonder if I'm holding on to something that's already broken beyond repair." Dr. Lane leaned forward, her expression kind. "Only you can decide if it's worth rebuilding. But remember, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to move forward, whether that's together or apart." Chapter 18: Testing Their Strength. Sophia decided to test their relationship further by inviting Ethan to a weekend getaway. She chose a quiet lakeside cabin, a place they had visited early in their marriage. It was a chance to see if they could rediscover the connection they once shared. When Ethan arrived, he brought a picnic basket filled with her favorite snacks. "I thought we could recreate that picnic we had here years ago," he said with a shy smile. Sophia couldn't help but smile back. "Let's see if you remember the spot." They walked along the lake, eventually finding the clearing where they had once spent hours talking about their dreams. Ethan spread out a blanket, and they sat side by side, the sound of the water lapping gently against the shore. As they ate, they talked about everything: past mistakes, future hopes, and the changes they had noticed in each other. "I've realized something," Ethan said after a long pause. "I used to think love was enough to sustain a marriage, but I've learned that it takes effort, patience, and respect. I failed you in those ways, and I'm determined to never make that mistake again." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "I want to believe you, Ethan. I really do. But it's hard." "I know," he said, taking her hand, "and I'll keep proving it to you for as long as it takes." Chapter 19: The Turning Point. On their last night at the cabin, they sat by the fireplace, sipping hot cocoa. Ethan reached into his bag and pulled out a small, wrapped box. "I wasn't sure if I should give this to you," he said, handing it to her. Sophia opened it to find a delicate necklace with a charm shaped like a compass. "I wanted you to have this," Ethan explained, "to remind you that no matter where life takes us, I'll always find my way back to you." Sophia was deeply touched, but also cautious. "This means a lot, Ethan, but a gift doesn't fix everything. It's the actions that matter." Ethan nodded. "I understand. This isn't a promise. It's a symbol of the effort I'm willing to put in every day." As they sat in silence, Sophia felt a small shift in her heart. It wasn't a grand epiphany, but a quiet, cautious hope. Chapter 20: Moving Forward. Back in the city, Sophia and Ethan continued to navigate their relationship one step at a time. They attended therapy together, learning how to communicate better and address the issues that had driven them apart. Sophia began to see consistent changes in Ethan. He was more attentive, more present, and more willing to take responsibility for his actions. She, too, worked on letting go of her resentment and learning to trust again. One evening, as they walked through the park, Ethan turned to her and said, "I know we're not there yet, but I want you to know how grateful I am for this second chance. You mean everything to me." Sophia looked at him, her heart full of conflicting emotions. We've come a long way, Ethan, and I'm starting to believe that maybe we can make it. As they walked hand in hand, the path ahead was still uncertain, but it was one they were willing to walk together. Chapter 21. The final test. Months passed, and the progress Sophia and Ethan had made was undeniable. Their bond had grown stronger, though it still bore the scars of their past. One day, Sophia received an invitation to her company's annual gala, a significant event that would bring together influential figures from her industry. Sophia hesitated to bring Ethan as her plus one. Though their relationship was improving, she knew this was a chance to see how he would handle being in a high-pressure social setting, especially one where people might whisper about their past. "Would you want to come with me?" Sophia asked Ethan one evening. He smiled. "If you're ready for us to take that step, I'd be honored." The night of the gala, Ethan was attentive and supportive, introducing himself to Sophia's colleagues with genuine charm. When a well-meaning but nosy co-worker brought up the rumors of their separation, Ethan handled it with grace. "We've had our challenges," he said, looking at Sophia with admiration. "But I'm grateful every day for the opportunity to rebuild what we lost." Sophia's heart swelled. It wasn't just his words. It was the sincerity behind them. Chapter 22. A choice made. After the gala, they returned to Sophia's apartment. As they sat on the couch, Ethan turned to her, his expression serious yet hopeful. "Sophia," he began, "I know I've hurt you in ways I can never fully erase, but I hope I've shown you that I'm committed to being the husband you deserve. I'm ready to spend the rest of my life proving that to you. If you'll let me." Sophia took a deep breath. She had been waiting for this moment, not for the proposal, but for the clarity she felt in her heart. "I forgive you, Ethan," she said softly. "Not because I've forgotten, but because I've seen how much you've changed. And because I want us to have a future together." Ethan's eyes filled with tears as he took her hands in his. "You have no idea how much that means to me." Chapter 23. New Vows. A year later, Sophia and Ethan stood in a small chapel surrounded by their closest friends and family. They had decided to renew their vows, not as an attempt to erase the past, but as a celebration of the new foundation they had built. As they exchanged heartfelt promises, Sophia felt a profound sense of peace. Their journey had been anything but easy, but it had made them stronger, both as individuals and as a couple. Epilogue. Light after darkness. Years later, Sophia sat in the nursery, rocking her newborn daughter to sleep. Ethan walked in quietly, a soft smile on his face as he placed a kiss on her forehead. "We've come a long way," he whispered, his voice filled with gratitude. Sophia looked at him, her heart full. "Yes, we have, and I wouldn't change a thing. Every step brought us here." As they stood together, their past no longer defined them. Instead, it served as a reminder of how far they had come and how much they had to look forward to, a future built on love, trust, and the resilience of the human spirit.